Welcome to A Conversation with Lynn Rogers. I am your host, Becky Kaiser. I am from Hayes. I work for Eagle Communications and Hayes Post News there. And we are delighted to have our state treasurer, Lynn Rogers, joining us in the studio here at Smoky Hills Public Television. And Lynn, we're going to first of all find out what it is that a state treasurer does. And actually, you have not been in that position all that long, although that doesn't mean you're new to Kansas or how the legislature works and how state proceedings go. Let's start with what is a state treasurer and what are your duties
what do we do?
Exactly?
I serve as the state treasurer. You're in essence kind of the state banker. So we make sure that all the money that comes into the state gets deposited and gets sent to the right accounts and the right forms. We work with the legislature and the governor to give them advice on financial matters. We manage the state unclaimed property, the ABLE and 529 Learning Quest accounts. We help loan excess money from the state general fund to businesses, agriculture, folks for emergency use, those types of things. It's kind of a wide variety, but I like to say we're really the watchdog for state finances to help make sure that the focus is on improving Kansans' financial ability as well as the state's.
I also want to point out, and I really didn't know this about you, but you're a farm kid.
Yes, I grew up on a farm in eastern Nebraska, but came to Kansas back in the 80s to work for the Federal Land Bank and the Farm Credit System. Traveled western Kansas for all of my banking and business career, and so have worked very closely with agriculture really my whole life.
I'm sure that's very helpful as you work with the legislators, the governor, and the people of Kansas. You talked about a couple of programs, Lynn, the 529, and we've just gotten past the month of May, and I know you were promoting that program.
Right.
That's not terribly new. It's been around for a while, but people probably are not real sure what it is, and it's a good investment.
It is. We've had almost a 33% increase since I've taken over last January. It's a savings account that you can help your kids or your grandkids prepare for their higher education. You get a $3,000 per person or $6,000 per couple deduction from your Kansas taxes, and all of the earnings are tax-free when you're ready to spend it. When you pull that money out, if it's used for tuition, fees, housing, those types of things, it's all not taxed at that point. So it's a great tax benefit for you and your kids. What's really great about it too is you're not limited to just a 4-year school. Children can use it for a 2-year vocational training, even a union apprenticeship. And they can do it in state or out of state, wherever they want to go to school. It's a great really benefit to improve really the working force for the state of Kansas.
Now, is that part of a federal program?
It was a federal program that allowed it to be initiated. Almost every state offers it. We have almost 270,000 accounts. Many of them are not even Kansans, but almost $10 billion in savings that can be used for higher education.
Well, that kind of answers my next question then. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the parents of little kids or bigger kids. It could be relatives, friends.
It can be relatives. Yeah, we see grandparents opening them. We even see adults using them if they've graduated with an undergrad of some kind and they're going back for a master's. We see teachers using it for their continuing education. They get that tax benefit, and then all of the earnings while they're not using it for tuition or whatever can be tax-free for them.
That's something people really should take advantage of, especially in this day and age where we're hearing so much about how expensive tuition is, how it's gone up, and people are in a lot of debt, many of them for tuition.
Is. We have a whole page on our website, kansascash.ks.gov, that they can go in and look at education services. One includes our Scholar Shop, which it's a database of over 6 million scholarships for $30 billion. We would love to see more Kansas kids apply for some of those. There are scholarships from all over the country. Some of them that never ever get used, nobody ever applies for them. So
they don't know about them.
They don't even know about them. So
right.
That website is free.
Wow.
They can create a an ID and go in and see which ones they might qualify for. It'll give them the date that the application is due and what is required for it. So we have a number of services there that we provide education background for people.
Boy, that's an excellent resource.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Another program that you mentioned, you talked about unclaimed property, and every once in a while, in fact, recently you were just in Hayes actually, and letting people know about it, and some people finding things that they didn't know were due to them. It amazes me how much the value is of unclaimed property.
We have almost $400 million that we're the trustees for, and it's money that doesn't belong to the state. It got turned over to us. It can be an old bank account. It can be a refund or a rebate, a check that got diverted for some reason, didn't get delivered to the right person. And oftentimes it's your correct address. It just, for some reason, the mail didn't get it delivered, and so that it got sent back to the vendor. We've got small amounts all the way to large amounts. We've found money, $10, $35 for a final paycheck for an employee that didn't know it was coming. Maybe it was in vacation pay or something of that nature. We find money for churches and nonprofits, businesses, all types of organizations. Again, they go to our website and can check their name. There's no cost to that. Again, kansascash.ks.gov. One of the things I do encourage people, though, when they go to the website is make sure they find the official state website. There are organizations that try to mimic, even my picture and things, and they'll charge you a fee. We never charge a fee, so you want to do that. If you lived in other states, you could check the state treasurer there to find money as well. But part of our goal is to get that money back to people as soon as we can. But we have transactions that go back almost 40 years, and we continue to find those people as we are out and about and look for them.
I didn't realize that nonprofits and businesses are part of that as well.
Right. It may not be a bank account, but it may be a refund check of some kind,
sure.
a gift that was supposed to be meant for them and then ended up getting diverted and sent back to us.
It can happen.
We've returned money to almost 100,000 to school districts around the state. We've returned money to counties and to cities, and so again, we try to, you'd think that, we would know where those people are at, but oftentimes people, when we do contact them, they think, oh, this is too good to be true. But if you get a letter and it's from the state treasurer and it's official, then it probably is true, so they want to go to the website and check it out.
So if somebody gets that letter, it doesn't necessarily mean there's a check in there. You're going to continue to verify?
Yeah, what they'll need to do is go to the website and they can claim it then at that point. And most of our claims can be done online. They just plug in their name, and if something comes up for them, there's a little item that they can click on and apply for it, and then we'll send the check then to them at that point. We'll confirm that that's the person it's supposed to be. Oftentimes, we can do that electronically, and then we'll just send them a check. If it's a new address, we'll confirm that that's the same person that was at the old address. So,
do you recall, since you've been in office, the biggest?
The largest, actually, we returned last July $5 million to a business.
Oh my gosh!
And they had no idea that it had been missing for a year. So
that must be a good feeling for you in your office.
It is fun. The hard part is I have called businesses. One time I had to call them about 8 times before they finally believed I was real and it was real and that really was their money.
Sure. So. Wow, that's amazing. $5 million. That was a happy day for them.
That was a very happy day, yes.
Well, I wanted to also talk a little bit about, as you were saying, Lynn, you have been the state treasurer since January of 2021. It's not been that long. You were appointed to that position from another position. Tell us a little bit about what this process has been for you and why it happened.
Well, I was ag banker for 31 years, loved that job, was on the Wichita School Board for 16 and a half years of that. I ran for the state senate from my position in Wichita because I had a state senator that never wanted to support public education, and so I ran and won. Sat in the back row of the Senate by then Senator Kelly, and she asked me to be the lieutenant governor, and so I served with her for 2 years. During that period of time, I worked really hard for the Office of Rural Prosperity. We did a lot of traveling and listening, and what we heard was that we had in our rural communities a lot of need for housing, broadband, and childcare. We started the first housing study in 31 plus years. And what was neat this year during the legislative session, the legislators really responded and put a lot of money into rural housing.
Yes.
And so we're going to see some growth there. And what's really important about that is if you have a house, that's great, but there's so many cities that want to expand, add a factory or a factory's there and they need to add staff. There's no place for them to live. Even schools, sometimes teachers, there's not places. And so that housing, I think, will really hit a huge need for economic growth in our rural communities to kind of give a resurgence to our rural communities. And
I
same
was
with
just
broadband.
excuse me, that makes me think, I was just at a ribbon cutting in Hayes for a unit, actually a historical building that was reconfigured as housing based on income. The day they opened that up to renters, it was filled.
Yes.
And it's a good example of how desperately this is needed.
Exactly. We see that community after community. Belleville has an old high school that they've renovated, and so there's downtowns of many of our older, smaller communities. There's a second floor that used to be an apartment that could really be converted and done that kind of thing. So yeah, I think the housing study has been a great start, and I think it's going to give a lot of rural communities the tools they need, to do that type of thing. So.
Do you have any idea of why we've gotten to this point? As we said, we're kind of talking about Western Kansas, but it's true across the state.
Yeah, our urban areas do it too. In 2008, 2009, when we had that economic downturn, we were building as a nation almost 2 million houses a year. That dropped almost down to about 600,000. And so we were only building about a third of the houses and that we need nationwide. And we weren't replacing the old housing stock. And one of the things we have in our treasurer's office is a $60 million loan fund for housing. It has never loaned out a dime since 2008 when it was created. And we'd like to revamp that. That's one of the reasons I'm running again, because we would like to see how do we make that more usable for particularly rural communities, for some of our housing stock that's gone out of it's not up to code, it's not up to what somebody wants to live in today. How do we renovate that? And we think we can do that with this kind of a housing program if we can work with some local housing authorities, local communities, nonprofits, as well as a local bank or financial institution to turn that around. We have several funds that we use, and we can loan idle dollars to businesses and banks and things of that nature. But that's a big need, but we just have never figured out how to use it right.
Well, you say idle dollars. What does that mean exactly?
We have money that when it's not being used for a state expense, it's idle for a period of time. I'm a member of the Pooled Money Investment Board that invests that. We try to get the highest return. And then when we need to use it for school expense or a state expense that's approved by the legislature and the governor, then they'll pull it out of that investment and use it for the right expense. While that's sitting idle or not being used for state expenses, we can then loan it out for other needs and other causes. So our investments usually are a higher return than what we would get in the investment community, but we're investing it in Main Street and on Kansas farms.
How does that differ, or is it a part of what we call the rainy day fund that finally got some money put into it this session?
It is part of that rainy day fund. We can pull our investments back quickly if we need to use it for an unexpected bill of some kind. But yeah, we've not had that rainy day fund really until this year, and because of some work that's been done here recently. But yeah, that's kind of the purpose. Is we usually always have several hundred million. That's I don't want to say it's not being used, but it's available to make payroll, to pay for school finance expenditures, those types of things. You've got to, as a bank or as a business, you've always got to have working capital, and so that's really what we're loaning out.
Okay. One of the things also that I know you talk about, and I believe there is information online about this again, is financial literacy. And when I hear that term, I think of students, but everybody needs to have an idea of how to handle their own finances. And I know the schools across Kansas are looking at, should this be, or how can we incorporate it into our curriculum? It's important to know.
Oh, it is. When I was on the Wichita School Board, we added that a semester course for high school juniors for financial literacy. Many school districts across the state have done it, but it is an issue for for all ages. And actually, when I was on the school board in Wichita, our biggest complaint was from parents that they wanted to take the course as well, and that they couldn't because they needed that same type of advice. And so we want to be kind of a hub for where financial literacy, what's available. There's a lot of organizations that offer it, some for, preschool, some for high school, some for adults. We want to be able to be a resource to help find that. And we can do a little bit of that with our Learning Quest. But the things that people save for is housing, for retirement, and for education, to prepare for their future. We've got a great education program. The state has started a new housing savings program. It hasn't been started yet, but they're hopefully working on that soon. But we'd also like to see what we could do for retirement. 55% of Kansans have no money saved for retirement.
Really?
And about 14 states around the country are doing a savings program for those kinds of people. And they start saving, at a part-time job, or maybe they work 3 different jobs and they can put a little bit of money away for retirement. And it's been very successful elsewhere. It lets people have some dignity in their retirement years because they have money saved. And so we'd like to see us, grow in that regard as well.
Also, you mentioned this earlier, and especially in the rural, sparsely populated areas, the need for good quality rural broadband. We were talking about,
Yes.
Access to your website,
Right.
and that's terrific. But if you don't have it in the first place, the broadband, or it's maybe too expensive to get to people in
Right.
these sort of isolated areas, it's a problem. But I know the state is looking at, and that was one of the things you came up with when you
Right.
talked about the Rural Prosperity Program.
Yeah, the Office of Rural Prosperity, that was the number 1 or number 2 thing that we heard. And you can't start a business, you can't run a business, can't run a farm without broadband. And much of the agricultural operations now are operated from your phone, and so
Right.
you need that even out in the field. We also saw that in many cases, if an area was recruiting a young professional, the spouse oftentimes wouldn't want to come because there was no job for them. But if they had broadband, they could work remotely from a number of different companies, around the country, and still, keep their career going, full speed. So broadband was huge. We were able to encourage a number of counties and cities to come up with a broadband plan that if they had funding, how would they use it? How would they expand it? Because of some of the COVID money that came in from the national side, I think over 50,000 Kansans now have better access to broadband than they did, prior to COVID. We'd like to see that expand even more. There's a lot of places where we don't have anything. And I carry a state phone and a personal, and it's amazing how many times neither one have service. And
Wow.
And yet, before we started the office of the broadband, we were told by the carriers that there was great service all over the state, and we knew better because we experienced and we'd heard the stories. So I think many cities and counties are better prepared to use the funding when they came in, but they also realize that that's economic development when they get that, because
Sure.
it allows people to even create a business at home that they wouldn't be able to do otherwise, let alone do their schooling, their medical work. Everything is commuting now.
And we really saw that, well, in fact, the whole country did when the coronavirus pandemic,
Yes.
crept up on us, and people were isolating at home, and it became very apparent how important it is for specific situations, and then how convenient it is in
Yeah.
our daily lives.
Yeah, I mean, we see that with telemedicine. I think that's something that's not going to go away, even with the pandemic going away. People find it very convenient to be able to call in to their doctor
Sure.
or their nurse, and particularly if you've got a young family or you're both working, and it's the same for every aspect of our life. Shopping, church, all kinds of things. It doesn't replace the in-person. We still need to have that, but there are times where it can really strengthen us and stretch us to do what we need to do.
You touched on this, Lynn, about people living in Kansas and raising their families. And I know one of the things that has been talked about by many communities is, and I think it's probably human nature, you go away to college and you want to go to the big town and explore, but there are young people getting married, starting families, and thinking, you know, I would like to come back to where I was raised in this safe community where I know people, and the opportunity for rural broadband being there is very helpful, and it's an economic development tool, as you said. Aren't there some programs that the state offers that help encourage and even financially aid people to move back?
We have a number of those. We don't handle those in the treasurer's office, but I try to encourage them. And when I was doing the Office of Rural Prosperity, we tried to engage. You know, what we heard from many of the communities was, you know, the living standards. It was more than just you know, a tax situation. It was really, did it have the amenities that they wanted for their family? You know, to be able to stay. Was the education at a high level that they could, you know, get their kids educated? Was there child care available for them? You know, those types of things were really beneficial. And I think what I saw too is the communities that would work with their kids while they were in K-12 to even let them know what kind of jobs were available in their county. Some kids would go off to school somewhere and not even realize that the engineering job that they were training for could be done in their own community. Because we didn't talk about, you know, what jobs are already there, professional jobs, and, you know, even in agribusiness, sometimes, you know, it's not just farming, but it's the support companies for agribusiness to do that kind of thing. So, so yeah, I think the communities that understood the big picture are going to be the ones that are going to grow and continue to prosper.
We have about 5 minutes left, Lynn, and I wanted to make sure we touch on the child care issue. Again, it seems to be something that's affecting everybody in the state, that there are a lot of reasons behind it. I know we have a very active child care task force in Ellis County, a variety of people helping out with that. What can we do? The state, is there a role for the state to play in this?
There is, and again, in the Office of Rural Prosperity, we cooperated with the Children's Cabinet, which is, you know, that was a result of the lawsuit against the cigarette companies, and provided a lot of funding. And so they've been putting together some child care plans and working with local counties and cities to come up with, you know, encouraging, you know, local communities to provide the leadership, but they could provide the resources. And what we saw in many of those cases is they work with the business community because it's a role the business community has to play. Because if they want employees, they need to provide, you know, childcare or have it available, you know, in the community, as well as the parents' responsibility. So that type of cooperation, I think, has started to move us down the road. We have a long ways to go. There's still a lot that needs to be done.
I know that the communities have talked about also asking their local representatives and senators to help out with this, but part of it is also there are a lot of federal standards and regulations that must be adhered to, and you know, things that maybe the state can't really adjust.
Yeah, some of them are state related, but again, we want to make sure that those kids are safe when they're in childcare. You know, no parent wants to put their child somewhere where they may be questionable, but I do think there's, and that's what the Children's Cabinet can help do, is work with some of those, you know, red tape issues, both on the federal and the state side, to at least address them and start working on that. So I think there's a lot of resources now that we haven't had, you know, until just the last 3 or 4 years that will help our rural communities if they take advantage of it.
Lynn, of course, we're heading into an election this fall, and you are running for a re-election as also again as our state treasurer. What kind of things are you out there hearing from people as you talk to Kansans? And do you have any, if re-elected, any specific programs or plans for the office?
I mean, part of my concern going forward is we need to be able to help with retirement. We need to make some of these lending programs more efficient. You know, we've had to update our software for unclaimed property. It was a program that was 16 years old, and so we.
That's ancient.
Yeah, in IT world. So we're working on all those, and we've got everybody, you know, moving, you know, full steam ahead. Staff are very excited about the future, what we can do. So we need to keep moving in that direction. I think the position is a lot of it is about competence. That, you know, you're hiring a banker to run, you know, the finances of the state. But what I'm hearing from many folks is, you know, they are concerned about their tax load. They're concerned about their future. You know, how do we work together and build our community and look to the future, not just next year, but 5 or 10 years down the road.
And right now anyway, and I don't know if it's going to change anytime soon, but we've got such a huge inflation factor going again
Yes.
across the nation.
Yeah, I mean, the issues that people are talking around, their kitchen table, do they have enough money for the gas bill that week, for fuel, for, food, all of those types of things are big issues, so.
All right. Well, Lynn, we thank you so much for taking time out to stop and visit with us today. We have been talking with Lynn Rogers, a conversation with Lynn Rogers, who of course is the Kansas State Treasurer, finding out a little bit about what the office is, what he does, and how he sees Kansas adjusting to the future. I thank you very much for joining us today. I'm Becky Kaiser.